Check. Matakepi. Chante Owašté nape chusa alako ia wakion wanatana machiam wachichu ia mat Remle machiam ian waslaha met mataha yashwana Seattle elwati ina Donna Harrison chia bate Charles Remle chia. Good evening, everybody. We're Owašté. We're going to open up with a few songs for you all.
Oh Thank you so much, Owašté, for that beautiful opening performance. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing? My name is Hollis Wong-Wear. I'm a singer, songwriter, and a filmmaker, and I am so honored and elated to be here at Town Hall celebrating the work of the ACLU of Washington with you tonight. This is the first time in 5 years that the annual celebration is in person. And it is also the first with the incredible Michele Storms as executive director. I'm a big Michele fangirl, actually. So you all look so fab tonight in person. I hope you all took advantage of the photo booth. And we also want to send a big welcome to our friends joining us online, on live stream. So to folks who are streaming this live stream event, we want you to know that tonight's conversation with Edgar Villanueva and Michele will not be recorded for future viewing. So please plan your breaks accordingly. And for those here in the room, the delicious food, did everybody participate in the delicious food tonight? Shout out that brown girl cooks. Food and drink, yes, please. An after party at communion. The food and drink will be served up until 7 p.m. So please feel free to take advantage before it closes up shop. Following our program, Edgar will be in the lobby to sign books, and you can get a copy of his book from Third Place Books on site. Tonight's theme is Dwell in Possibility. The phrase comes from the beginning of an Emily Dickinson poem where she speaks of possibility as a house, the multitude of windows, chambers, doors, and an everlasting roof. Possibility as an expansive home of imagination to explore. She ends the poem, quote, "The spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise." The concept of paradise has felt remote over the last 2 weeks, in particular for me. It has been a time of horror, agony, and confusion, sifting through the inundation of content and contradictions, holding the pain and fear of those connected and impacted by the Israel-Palestine conflict. I've been so awed by the Palestinian, Jewish, and Muslim Americans in my sphere who have not only been grieving aloud through trauma, but also are educating, mobilizing, and organizing those of us who wish to stand in solidarity and center humanity over simplistic condemnations. Too often in times like these, it is easier to dwell in impossibility, to avert our eyes, stay quiet, and conclude that our individual actions will have no impact in the face of all that is aching and is in need of repair. It feels easier to weave excuses and anxieties that bind and immobilize, easier to slip into isolation, down into the basement of hopelessness. And I believe our charge at this moment is to fashion windows, to dare to see beyond ourselves, to forge connections and push past complacency, to lead with curiosity and a desire to learn, to hold witness, to read books when it is easier to scroll, to ask questions and embrace complexity when it is easier to assume and reduce, to understand possibility not as wistful thinking, but as urgent importance. This is a moment where our faith is being fundamentally tested. Can we all be bound by a collective belief in possibility? It is a balm to be with you all here tonight, to celebrate the ACLU, and in particular, 3 remarkable leaders that not only dwell in possibility, but are architects of possibility. I have had the privilege of producing the highlight reels that you'll see to introduce each awardee, and I am so deeply grateful for the heart, courage, and faith that they have poured into their work and their communities despite the odds. And tonight, you'll take in inspired dialogue with our keynote conversation with Edgar Villanueva and poetry and music from Arianne True, Blue, and Black Belt Eagle Scout. May tonight's art, discourse, and celebration of pushing relentlessly for progress and self-determination lift our spirits. May tonight illustrate that possibility is not an abstract wish, but a call to action, a call to creativity, a call to stand together, to shift systems, to generate new pathways, and to let the light in. So to begin and to continue to spark our collective light, I would like to introduce Arianne True, Washington State Poet Laureate. I'm gonna say more, but she deserves. Arianne is a Choctaw and Chickasaw queer poet and teaching artist from Seattle and has spent most of her time working with youth. She's received fellowships and residencies from Jack Straw, Artist Trust, and the Seattle Repertory Theater, and is a proud alum of Hedgebrook and of the MFA program of the Institute of American Indian Arts. She'll be reading a piece called The Gravity of Joy. Please make some noise for Arianne.
Thanks, Hollis, and chukmashki to our singers and drummers tonight. Thank you, all of you. It's exciting to be here. A lot of folks don't know that the Poet Laureate position is equally about poetry and civics and bringing what poetry can offer to every part of our state. The poem I'm going to read for you tonight, the past few years I've been trying to learn how to hold more complexity of feeling in my creative work because that's what's real for me. There's a lot of really, really hard stuff, and there's also a lot of really beautiful things. And holding those all together is what I'm working on learning to do, and that's what possibility means to me. So I'm going to read to you The Gravity of Joy. We bought the sled in August after seeing the hills we lived near, even though the chance of snow was months out. Tonight, we didn't bring it with us, bundled and cantering through the first few inches. Our feet inventing patterns to carve that surely you've invented too. Rows of foot-tall smiley faces and, in front of a stranger's house, a yo with an O so wide it looks like a cheek pulled out and stretched taut. And I start to let go of our fight from this afternoon. The particulars fall away and are slowly, quietly buried, something like a hush. You can watch it fall, flake by flake, and surely they are so small and so delicate they could never cover my raised voice. But they do. You can see the shape it makes under the snow. Then a brass band. We hear it walking home. I shit you not. We hear something like a brass band, and I think someone is putting their lips to metal. It is 27 degrees. Sometimes you do get pulled ear first or nose first towards something you can't see. We're not the only ones. Pairs of us drawn to the park, trusting melody. You can see the gravity of joy tonight, the way it weighs down unseen dimensions, and we, our feet following behind, fall towards. We get denser, closer to the sound. Even so late, hours past when any of us would go here any other night. It's not a brass band, but it is a trumpet and a backing track, standing in black on the hill with a dog, with a light-up collar running in circles, with sledders hiking up to the right to go again, and snowboarders, bless them, squeaking in 360s off hand-piled ramps on 100-meter hills. A teenage boy lounges, really, he lounges, in head-to-toe denim in the snow, taking video of the trumpeter and leaning back on an elbow like the swell of earth is a swell of sand and wave. I want to dance with you, but the dance song is over and I am trying not to be sad about it. Hold you instead, your back against my front and both of us taking in what feels like a small miracle. It is close to midnight, but the light off the snow takes us out of time, so we go home to get the sled. You say the music will be gone when we get back, and I am trying not to be sad about that now. It's not the first time. The trumpet is gone when we get back with the sled, but the park is not quiet, at least not silent. Impossibly small children scream something like words at the bottom of the hill before running back up. The snowboarders, bless them again, thunk gently, sliding down the rail they've made by lining up 4 of the park's picnic benches. I want to play jazz off my phone, but no, it's not the same. We bring our sled to the top of the hill and tuck our 2 adult bodies into it. This ends up being the only way it works. The plastic is too thin for less than 300 pounds of downward pressure. Less and it warps and turns around. My shirt soaked from the snow that shoveled up my coat on those first runs alone. We bought a craft sled. But we ride it almost 2 hours, and when we take breaks, we put chocolate from our pockets into our mouths and think about kissing. Sometimes I put it right onto your tongue. There's a minus tide a mile off down at the water, and the smell of fish, seaweed, salt makes me breathe deeper. You stop to rest, and I look up into the snow, stinging tornadoes in the light from the park's vintage street lamps. This isn't a snow, it's a winter storm, and my face and hands want to crack from it. They might by tomorrow. But the snow blows sideways in front of old buildings and new buildings that border the park. It blows against the trees where I hope the squirrels are tucked so deeply away. It blows against my body, which is so sick this winter. but is so protected right now that the chill doesn't even come in at the cuffs. And maybe the news I got on Wednesday will be okay. And maybe you will be okay, and I will be okay, and maybe you and I will be okay. And maybe here is a good place to be. I don't know what comes after the snow melts, but it might be okay just to watch it swirl in light from old lamps, to take a couple runs down the hill on my own again, and when the shitty green sled warps, catches, faces me wrong, to throw my weight out of it and bail, arms pinwheeling, body rolling, and laughing like I haven't in weeks. Thank you all.
Please make some renewed applause for the Washington State Poet Laureate, Arianne True. What a gorgeous poem. Thank you so much for sharing. I am now elated to introduce our keynote conversation between Michele Storms and Edgar Villanueva. Edgar Villanueva is an award-winning author, activist, and expert on issues of race, wealth, and philanthropy. Villanueva is the principal of Decolonizing Wealth Project and Liberated Capital, and author of the best-selling book that they're selling downstairs, that you should also buy, Decolonizing Wealth. He advises a range of organizations, including national and global philanthropies, Fortune 500 companies, and entertainment on social impact strategies to advance racial equity from within and through their investment strategies. Villanueva holds a BSPH and MHA from the Guillen Global School of Public Health at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He's an enrolled member of the Lumbee tribe and resides in New York City. Please join me in welcoming Edgar and Michele to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Edgar, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm just tickled pink that you're finally here. I can't believe we're finally here doing this. So glad you're here. Thank you.
It is such an honor to be back in Seattle, my home, away from home.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you keep coming back. Okay, so as has been mentioned, you wrote an amazing book called Decolonizing Wealth. And I know our team at our office has read this book and really dug into it, and we love it. But since some of the people here might not have read it yet, we thought it might be great if you could start with a little framing and definitions, right? So let's start with the fact that you're talking about decolonizing. So what do you mean by that? And why is that concept so important to our shared work for equity and justice?
Sure. Thank you, relatives, for having me again. Really enjoyed the poetry, the drumming. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thanks to the ACLU-WA. ACLU, sorry. I'm always bad with acronyms. I get the letters mixed up. So decolonization, we could talk all night about that one word, but I'm gonna just share briefly how I unpack this hulk of a word. To really understand decolonization, you have to really understand what colonization is. And obviously, decolonization is the process of undoing colonization. Colonization is something that we probably learned about in school, and we learned about the folks who conquered and colonized and Western expansion. And you know, it's really this strange thing because the colonizing powers talk about colonization with no shame. They're actually quite proud of their accomplishments. I went to Portugal a few years ago, and just the massive monuments, you know, that were erected there in honor of their expeditions and their colonizing. You know, but it's really, the truth is colonization is an atrocity. It's a very violent force. And it's something that has been happening on this land for hundreds of years that has caused so much trauma. And it is, you know, different from conquering, right? When you conquer, you go to a place, you take their things, you kill anyone who gets in your way, and then you leave. But colonization is so much deeper. You go to a place and you stay, and you force the existing indigenous people to become like you. And not to be like, make light of it, but I kind of think of it like a zombie invasion. Like you just literally go and you insist on taking over the minds and the spirits, erasing and just destroying everything that is not like the powers that be who are doing the colonizing. And so, 2 points that I think are really important as we're unpacking what colonization and decolonization are. One, I want to say that it is not something that just happened historically, because we kind of think about colonization from this historical perspective. It is an act that is still happening very much right now. We are still taking children from their families. We still put them in cages. We are still taking land from folks, and all these things are still happening all around us. We're almost immune to it because none of us have ever lived in a place that was where there was an act of colonization happening. So we all go to bed and sleep just fine every night, although these atrocities are happening all around us, which is really sad. The other thing that is really important to remember, and I think good context for this conversation, is like, when I think about colonization, it's not a blaming or pointing to folks who are descendants of the colonizers, right? I want you to understand that the impacts of hundreds of years of colonization have impacted us all negatively, all of us in this room, whether you are descendants of the colonizers or the colonized. We have different trauma, but we are all suffering because we have not healed from this process, this virus of colonization that has infected every aspect of our being, all of our policies and systems that are at play. So decolonizing, for me, to make it really simple, it is a political act, but the way that I approach decolonization is to think about healing from the collective trauma of colonization. It's acknowledging the truth, which is clearly under attack right now, and documenting that and committing to a collective healing process, because we're all in this thing together.
Thank you so much. I love what you said specifically about the healing process, right? That's the work of decolonizing. It's a piece of that work. Yeah. And so let's go here. So as you talk about colonization, you say one of the things about it is that it is control over what is imaginable. So here we are tonight dwelling in possibility. And I think maybe that could be a tool for decolonization, the act of dwelling in possibility, right? Absolutely. So what are you dwelling in these days?
Yeah, it's a fact that one of the spoils of colonization is, it has really taken away our ability to imagine. And I think to decolonize, it does begin with imagining. It does begin with believing that something different is possible. It's really hard sometimes. I often think about, one day I'm like, burn it all down, and then the next day I'm like, incremental change is the way to go, right? When all you have, when all you have is like a little boat in the middle of the ocean that is like raggedy with holes in it, but it's all you got, you kind of want to hold on to it, but you also want a different boat. So it's complex, right? It's really nuanced and complex, but I think that, there's a saying that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than an end to capitalism, right? We are so deeply ingrained in this way of being. It is, all of the media that we have consumed, everything that we were taught, every system and process that we navigate and use every day has been so deeply designed around this process and idea, or this virus of colonization, this extraction, this harm, this oppression, pitting one group against the other, the haves and the have-nots. So it is really hard to imagine something different, but we have to. The only way out of this mess is to be able to imagine that a different way is possible, and that's the only thing that gets me out of bed every day. I've got to believe that a different world is possible. So I'm so thankful for spaces like this where we can talk, and we can challenge each other, we can remind each other, we can inspire each other that there is a future in which we all can thrive, and that we can heal from these wounds of generational trauma.
Right. So you just referenced that, like, we're all living in it. We're swimming in these poisonous waters. So that's real. So what recommendations do you have, or what ideas do you have for all of us, right, as we try to imagine something new?
You know, I think I'm obsessed right now with this fight around our history and how it's being erased and the banning of books and the making it illegal to teach, you know, our histories in classrooms. And even before all this happened, you know, only about 20-something states in America even teach about Native Americans after the 1800s, or even mention us in the curriculum. So I think that to get to a better future, we have to begin by understanding how we got here, right? And I think that folks who on the right know this. There's a reason they are banning books. There's a reason they want to sweep the history under the carpet, right? There's an agenda behind that. It's that they don't want to feel bad about it. Yeah, that's part of it, but there's a deeper agenda behind trying to erase our history. And because they know that if we can actually pull the Band-Aid off and address our history and lean into that and accept it and take collective ownership for our history, for the fact that Black people in this country have never had an official apology for slavery, right? That indigenous folks whose land was taken have never received an additional, an official apology. That it was not until like the late 70s that the last boarding school in this country closed down. That IBM Computers has been around longer than my people's right to vote, right? So there has been no amends or even recognition and just solidification of this history in a way that we need to, that brings it forward. Because the only way to get to the future is to start by looking back. So I don't like to dwell in negativity and all that, right? I'm a very silly person, but I know that the only way for us to heal is to actually like understand how we got here, you know, and just own it and like all take collective responsibility around that. So for individuals, I think that it's really important for you to know your own history. Who's your people, as we say back home in North Carolina? Who's your people? Where did y'all come from? And you know, if you're a white person, what's your ancestral history and what healing needs to happen from there? And where does your people's history intersect with the history of this country? Did you receive some extra boosts from different ways, or were you oppressed from that? It's really important to know who we are and what we're bringing to this work. So I'm always inviting people to know their history, know their people, know where they came from, and bring that into your work. And do that healing that is necessary within your own personal life and family based off that history, so that you can show up and be a leader and help others heal.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So, right, you said we don't want to stay too long in the difficult part, but it is vexing that we're in this place where we can't get reparations or an apology for really dramatic harms that not only were done at one point in time, but continue to have generational impact, right? Across so many systems. So we're vexed by that. We're vexed by the political realities of our time. And you mentioned a bit ago about the haves and the have-nots and the us and the them, right? So one of the things that you talk about is unity and healing from that separation. And you actually lay out 7 steps for us to heal. So I'd love for you to share more about that.
Yeah, so our work at Decolonizing Wealth Project really is helping us understand how we hurt, right? And a lot of that is the history, lots of history lessons that we give. But we are very excited to try to help people understand how we heal. And we have a reparative philanthropy framework that we use with the sector of philanthropy. But we have 7 steps to healing that can be applied to any institution, to any situation, a country, a family. These 7 steps of healing are rooted in Indigenous worldview. If you're familiar with restorative justice practices, all of that comes from the same sort of Indigenous teachings. And it begins with, again, acknowledging the truth and grieving the truth, right? Grieving is not fun. No one wants to grieve, but we have to truly grieve and allow what has transpired to work its way through our body in order to heal. We are so quick to jump to solutions. I get invited in all the time. Give me your checklist. You know, we want to be decolonized by 5 p.m., right? And it's hard, right? It is. We are very solution-oriented often, especially those of us in the nonprofit sector. We're trying to help, and so, but we do have to pause to grieve and to let what has transpired in our communities really work its way through our bodies. We're not going to have the right solutions up here if we're not letting the work happen here. And grieving is a part of that spiritual work, that soul work, that emotional work that has to happen inside. And, you know, I say we don't have reparations because America's not sorry. You know, like we don't have what we want to need because people truly aren't sorry that these things happen. Because, you know, think about it, just with a friend, right? If you harm a friend and you're really sorry, you're going to feel bad about it, right? You're going to be like, I'm so deeply, you know, sorry that I harmed you in this way. And that feeling is going to motivate you to not inflict further harms on a person, right? We don't have that type of conscience in this country. We've lost that, and that's what I hope that we can get back to. But these 7 steps of healing begin with that, and then they go further into apologizing. We're in an era of truth and repair right now with all that's going on the attack on history and curriculum and books. We're in an era of truth and healing. More than 90 universities in this country are going through processes of truth and reconciliation right now. We're working across philanthropies. I never thought in the 20 years that I've worked in the foundation world that a foundation would come out and say, we want to be honest, our money came from enslaving Black people and from tobacco and from harmful and extractive investments. And we are sorry for that, and we want to pay reparations with our money. A foundation that we work with in the UK just decided to shut their doors and dismantle the foundation and give the money back to community because they said, it's your money in the first place. I mean, it is just, that's powerful. We are seeing truth and repair work happen with the American Library Association, these institutions, the American Medical Association, who have said, you know, we've been around for a long time and we've used this institution to perpetuate ideas of white supremacy. We haven't been fair. We didn't allow Black people to be members, or like all the things are coming forth with that history and just being honest about it and saying we're sorry. I think it's really beautiful. Lush Cosmetics. Y'all know Lush? Mm-hmm. I mean, EVA corporations we did some work with them to not think just about their DEI plan and the future work that they want to do to be more, have a culture of belonging and equity in their company, but to also look back. So they have a DEIR plan, a repair plan, and each of their stores are going to have a reparations plan to think about what have they done in community that potentially was harmful. Have they contributed to gentrification? Have they not paid folks fairly? Have they sourced products that were harmful to the earth? So it's really exciting to me. This is where we are right now in this country. So get with it, y'all. This is where it's at. So that's what the 7 steps of healing are all about. It's really about truth and reconciliation. And then towards the end, I really get into the money part because it's always about money. It's about, you know, investing and divesting in the right things and reparations, redistributing wealth back to communities from where it was extracted in the first place.
Awesome. Love that. And everyone has the chance to dig into those 7 steps of healing because the books are downstairs. So keep that in mind. All right, so I'm looking across the room at all of these wonderful people. We're at an ACLU event, so you know what the ACLU is. We have staff and members and donors and supporters and just lovers of liberty and freedom, right? And fighting for it and holding it strong. So for people who are already in that space of commitment, what are some suggestions for us? How can we really live into this?
It's a great question. 2 things come to mind. I think, and it's so important right now, it feels like more than ever that we just remain steadfast and committed. There's so much backsliding happening right now because of the Supreme Court decision, and there's fear, and you know, people are backing away from wanting to talk about race and all of that. So I think it's more important now than it has been in a long, long time that we are unapologetic about a commitment to racial and economic justice, and that we stand boldly and we fight for the right to do that. And so I know that ACLU at large has been really involved in kind of pushing back and supporting a number of institutions like Philanthropy, where I work, who has sort of lost its mind a little bit about getting afraid to fund anything that's specifically for a community of color. All this work is, you know, so it's so important to be bold. And I think there's, you know, two things, well, maybe it's three things. Number two and number three. I think that we have to make space for the leadership of young people. And y'all, this is hard. Do we have some young people in here? I never thought I would be one of those old people to like think the way that I think about young people sometime, because it was just the other day I was a young person thinking like, but every day I am challenged by young people. I don't understand the way that they want to show up at work, the way that they want to lead, but I think that they have a vision for the future that I don't have, and I've got to make space for their leadership. I don't have to give them a spa appointment every day at work or whatever, but you know, all the things that they demand. But we got to love young people and make space for their leadership in spaces like this, especially long-standing institutions. We need to, young people have a growing disdain toward institutions in this country, even progressive institutions. And so we need to question why and make space for that, because we need strong progressive institutions in this country. The last thing I'll say, I think that we as progressive people need to practice grace a little bit more. And what I mean by that, y'all, I am wore out with this cancel culture. Oh my goodness. We are all human beings doing this work from a place of love, and we're all going to make mistakes. And what we cannot do is tear each other down, criticize each other. This is a colonial mindset, these scarcity mindsets, right? This fear. We have to come against that and find unity. And so right now, I've had a number of conversations with leaders of progressive organizations, and it's a tough time. And so we need to get behind and lift up our leaders. There's loving accountability that needs to happen when somebody makes a mistake, but we should not be throwing people out and dismissing them and not giving people second chances. Now, when somebody does something, you know, they're within reason, right? But we, you know, when I grew up in a right-wing family, I grew up in an evangelical church. I came from that side, right? And so I left North Carolina from that environment and moved to Seattle, progressed a little bubble that could not have been even more different for me personally, right? But one thing that I picked up I love my progressive bubbles. You know, it's safe, you know. But we're very heady, y'all. We're very intellectual. We like to debate. We love our research. We love our data. What's different sometimes has been in my experience is that in those right-wing places, I will tell you that I never felt like there was one thing that I could have done wrong where I would have been pushed out. They would have said, you're welcome here. You can come back tomorrow. You can ask for forgiveness, and you will be restored to leadership. I mean, literally, you could commit all kind of crimes and still run for president over there, right? So there is a line. There is a place for accountability, but can we learn loving accountability and learn forgiveness and grace for each other? Because this work is hard. It's hard. And so that's my ask.
As you can see, everyone appreciates that message, right? Stay steadfast, listen to the young people, and have some grace. Just for a recap, in case anybody missed any of that, that was really good. That was really good. Okay, so you've talked a little bit about Indigenous worldview, and there's values of connection and belonging and reciprocity that you describe, abundance, and particularly us getting to a place where our flourishing is mutual, where everybody gets to flourish, right? And that is the most delightful possibility that I can think to dwell in. And so I would just want to, as we're getting close to the end, because I'm getting people giving me signs, what would you like to offer to our attendees tonight, regardless of their indigeneity, about this worldview and how we can really live into that?
Yeah, I mean, y'all are so lucky because you live in this area. There's so much
No doubt.
indigenous here, right? When I moved here from North Carolina, I was just astonished at the names of places and how visible the community is here, and all that the indigenous community here offers and shares with you all. So connect with the community and build with them. Our people have always been generous to share. Indigenous worldview, the way that we see the world, is not something that we have a monopoly on. We extend that and invite folks to see the world through that lens. We see, we see things in so many different ways, and that worldview has allowed us to survive for thousands and thousands of years, right? We know how to be in harmony with the land and with the planet. We know how to live in a way that is respectful, and you don't have to like everybody, but you do, this all my relations value of really truly believing that we are all connected, and my suffering is your suffering, and your thriving is my thriving. That stuff is real. It's really real. And so these ideas of separation and isolation, again, a colonial construct that we have to dismantle. And so everyone is invited to put on the indigenous worldview. We have a journal, and there's lots of Native folks who teach and train. But it's practice. I'm Native. Some of it's in my DNA, but I didn't wake up and see the world in all those ways, right? I grew up in a very colonial, North Carolina, and I'm still unlearning and relearning. That's another kind of definition of decolonization, is unlearning a lot of stuff and relearning. And so we have to just challenge our assumptions and really work hard to see, to see how we show up in community in a very different way. And so, yeah, it's for everybody.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Love that generosity. So, okay, as we're wrapping up, I'll just ask you this, Edgar. What gives you hope?
Our time's up already, man.
I know, it was fast. We could do this for a long time, right? It'd be fun.
Oh, I love that question, especially given the last several weeks have been really, really hard for all of us. What gives me hope in this moment is the power of people, and how to witness how solidarity can look and how love can look, and people coming together to fight for what's right. And that's what the ACLU has always been about, right? It's been about building power, but grassroots organizing and movement building. I mean, we're always going to show up when it's time to fight. And so I'm inspired every single day in the work that I do to support organizers and activists who do this work out of a place of calling. They're not getting big dollars from the grants that we give them. They were doing it for free before philanthropy decided to come around and start supporting them. I'm deeply inspired by the folks who are impacted by everything that's going on, but still have the strength to get up and keep fighting and organize their communities, because those of us who have lived in the margins, who have been most impacted by injustice, have exactly the solutions needed to move us forward. So I'm so grateful for people who are taking a stand, like you all, who are taking a stand for right and are organizing and fighting back. We can't give up. So that gives me hope.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank y'all.
So among other things, you and the work that you're doing give me hope. And I think it's inspiring for everyone, as we could tell by that applause. And let's have one more round to thank Mr. Edgar Villanueva. All right, friends. When I became the executive director of the ACLU of Washington in March of 2019, at that time, I was so excited to be able to share my vision with you and what we're doing, and we had a great event planned for April 2020 to really show you what was going on, and then you know what happened. A global pandemic sent us all inside for safety. A racial reckoning erupted in the streets in protest of George Floyd's murder. And over the next few years, we witnessed stark increases in poverty, houselessness, and hopelessness. A US Supreme Court which has been taking away bit by bit our civil liberties and rights, and continued political unrest and uncertainty around the country. So yes, we do need to reimagine our current and future realities. We must decolonize our minds. I'm so happy and honored, finally after 5 years, to be able to celebrate with you in person. Yeah, it's all right. So after dreaming and hoping of a more equitable future along with the brilliant Edgar Villanueva, I'd like to share how we have been hard at work bringing some of those dreams into reality at the ACLU of Washington. So as an integrated advocacy organization, we use all of the tools at our disposal, and that means we fight and we win in the courts, at the legislature, at the ballot box. We educate the public through the media, events, and know your rights information. That's what we do. And we don't do any of that alone. We build relationships with communities, advocates, and allied organizations working together to assure that absolutely everyone in Washington state lives with dignity, equity, and freedom unimpeded by racial and economic injustice and other forms of oppression. In the past year, we've made a number of strides toward that vision. So, examples. We fought systemic racism and mass incarceration by ending the practice of extending a person's sentence if they have a juvenile record. And we will... And we'll return to Olympia next session to make sure that that new law applies to people who are currently incarcerated so that we leave no one behind. Our team and our partners fought against the Seattle Police Department's abusive and racist practices through amicus briefs in support of Black Lives Matter protesters and regard to the federal consent decree that still exists. Partially still in effect. We successfully expanded the application of General Rule 37. What's that? Well, it's a court rule, a first-in-the-nation court rule that we helped to bring about that protects the jurors of color from exclusion, and now we're extending it to other parts of the criminal legal system, which is a key advance in addressing systemic racism. With our With our partners, we successfully advocated to create a Medicaid-like program for undocumented people in our state to enable undocumented people to buy health insurance on the government exchange. And this will save lives. We worked with local activists in multiple communities to prevent the removal of materials covering racial justice and LGBTQA Two-Spirit Plus materials from schools and libraries. We fought the criminalization of poverty by taking Seattle to court for policies that violate the constitutional rights of unhoused people. We also fought mass surveillance by preventing Seattle from installing microphones throughout neighborhoods without authorization under the Seattle Surveillance Ordinance. So in addition to these and many more victories, I want to explore in greater detail just a couple of things. So during the 2023 legislative session, we successfully supported policies that made Washington a leader in protecting and expanding access to reproductive and gender-affirming health care. And this work included better protecting patients and providers who might be at risk of out-of-state investigations or legal actions because they provide or receive care that's legal in Washington state. We also worked with partners to protect the professional licenses of health providers who offer reproductive or gender-affirming care, and we advocated to end cost sharing for abortion, making important health care services more accessible to everyone, regardless of their access to wealth. In collaboration with privacy and reproductive and gender-affirming care advocates, we advanced groundbreaking legislation to protect healthcare data from abuse. So health data collected from crisis pregnancy centers, websites, and apps, among others, is not protected by federal law, but now it's protected in Washington state law. And obviously, this is increasingly important in a post-Roe versus Wade world. So finally, I'd like to share some work that we're doing on behalf of people who are among the most vulnerable to government abuse, and that is people who are incarcerated. We filed a lawsuit in February against King County alleging violations of the historic Hammer Settlement Agreement, which was the result of a joint 1989 lawsuit brought by the ACLU of Washington and Evergreen Legal Services. And that settlement governed conditions in jail. Now, by the county's own admission, they've consistently failed to provide humane and legal conditions for people in the facilities, which includes inadequate staffing. And what that has meant is the county has failed to provide timely mental health and medical treatment, failed to transport individuals to medical appointment, even failed to transport people to court hearings. This case is ongoing, and we will remain diligent in our defense of the most vulnerable in our society. So those are just a few examples of the work we're doing, not only to dwell in possibility, but to make those possibilities real. We are always so deeply, truly grateful for the relationships and the partnerships that we forged with communities, advocates, activists, allied organizations, and you. So tonight, we dwell in possibility together, and tomorrow, we continue our work for the future that we want to see, work that we do together with a decolonized mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michele. Can we make some noise one more time for the conversation between Edgar and Villanueva and Michele Starms? I feel like my inspiration cup runneth over. I just wanted, there's so many takeaways that I felt from this conversation, but one, that anecdote that was shared about the UK philanthropic organization, just dismantling isn't It doesn't have to be so hard. It can be a decision. Imagine. I'm inspired. And I hope that all of you take advantage of the opportunity to purchase the book and to get it signed by Edgar in person downstairs from Third Place Books. And then, yeah, I think just as somebody who loves, and I'm so thankful for being from Seattle, being from Washington State, things nationally feel so dire, particularly around these critical issues, whether it's education of marginalized histories or gender-affirming care, and even the right for trans people to exist. And it can feel so perilous and so impossible. So I think I would just like to thank the ACLU of Washington for making it possible, making it more possible here, so that we can see that modeled elsewhere and have hope and possibility for the nation. So that's just, yeah. And now, before we get to our awardees, we're going to have a wonderful poetic interlude and a reading by Blue, also known as Caitlin Clark, also known as the Keeper of Crowns. Blue is a hair artist, a writer, and all-around creator who hails from the barbecue pits of Kansas City. Inspired by storytellers such as Nikki Giovanni and Nasir Jones, her work often chronicles the realities of Black womanhood in America. She currently resides in Seattle. However, you can keep up with her wherever you are on Instagram, at Keeper of the Crowns, or at keeperofthecrowns.com. And she'll be reading an original piece tonight called Tarot. Please join me in welcoming Blue.
Good evening, everyone. Am I close enough? Can you all hear me? All right, good. I am really happy to be here this evening. Let me tell you, I thought it was hard being a Black woman, but it is even harder being a truth teller right now in today's society. So it's hard, but you know, I'm built for it. And it's a calling, so here I am, and I'm going to share with you all a little bit of my truth in this piece. So this poem is called Tarot. Cards read, "The future is bloodshed and discharge. Unlining and relining of uterine walls until sperm meets destiny or menses meets finality, but until then. Bodies are offered up to Horus as war offerings or rezoned and redlined like inner city school districts or expected to raise men who won't kneel. A man on the number 7 bus cheekily calls it pussy politics. You stare at him in hypervigilance, hoping that your stop is near. Shook one's part 2 in headphones to quell quiet fear. Maybe you should stay strapped like Jimmy hats, ghetto riot gear. Your trigger finger's been itching since you left the Garden of Eden anyways. The future is bruised. From heart pounding against ribcage, anxiety. Holding tongue to protect white, fragility. You swallow battle cries and nurse wounds privately because the air is too thick to comb through. When your doctor puts stethoscope to skin, you ask between bated breaths if she can hear the war waging beneath your chest. You don't tell her about your ears and how they've been ringing since freedom left. There's a knowing in her eyes which says, surrender armor, accept meds, and the war starts again. The future is healing. You know, my cousin asked me, do you think you'll ever finish school? You know, get a degree? I said I'd rather have a job than a receipt. Besides, I was 5 when a neighbor began teaching me anatomy behind bedroom doors, brain to cerebral cortex. At 13, history repeated itself, so I gave in to the subtext without pretext. 21, the year I took behavioral psychology and learned that dogs will be dogs, but bitches will be held to higher standards. 29. At 29, I took women's studies and watched those same dogs get elected. And still, no amount of education can teach you how to heal inside a chamber triggered by triggers. The future is grieving. For Kanika Jenkins, and Charlene Lyles, and Corrine Gaines, and Sandra Bland, and Rakia Boyd, and Michele Cusseau, and Ayanna Stanley Johnson, and Breonna Taylor, and am I next? You keep asking, where are our girls? But they've been in the footnotes and bibliographies of our history, right next to Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and Manny Ellis and Eric Garner and George Floyd, and they've been colonizing our bodies since Sarah Bartman and Josephine Baker, and you keep pushing us to the margins as if we haven't rewritten history from there. The future are alchemists, spinning reality into gold and cubic zirconia into diamonds, current stained currency into rubies. We are precious, see? We are precious, please. Politics and pelvic only stir us into 100 degrees Celsius until we burst. The future is unconquerable. Bullets for bones and blades for tongues. We go back like cutting hearts on half sheets with safety scissors until the page bled fallacies. Go back like press pound to accept calls from an inmate in a penitentiary. Go back like Pullman porters pulling a living from the cracks of history. You've got to know, if it's us, then it's we. If it ain't, let it be. Wave apologies for equity and Legba may spare you eternity. Thank you.
Y'all, I love amazing poetry. Please make some more noise for Bloom. Yes. Wow. Wow, yes. All right, and now it is time to celebrate 3 visionary leaders. Each year, the ACLU of Washington recognizes champions of civil rights and civil liberties with the Bill of Rights Awards. Here is ACLU of Washington Deputy Director Tonie Davis to present the first award.
Hey, y'all, hey. So, the Kathleen Taylor Civil Libertarian Award was established in 1977. It was established to honor people who have made outstanding contributions to the ACLU of Washington or to civil rights in the state of Washington. Examples of such contributions include uncommon, courageous, and forthright public stance on unpopular issues. The award was renamed in 2018 to honor our former executive director, who is now retired, Kathleen Taylor. And this evening, I have the honor and the privilege of introducing Nancy Talner as this year's recipient. Now, some things you may or may not know about Nancy, okay? She is an attorney with 42 years of legal experience, and 28 of those years were spent at the ACLU of Washington before she retired. She has a phenomenal son named Bert, who is here with us. She is the lucky human to a dog named Marlin. Her favorite music artist is Bob Marley. And her favorite food is chocolate. And most important, for purposes of tonight's award, Nancy loves the law, and she loves the work of social justice. I knew instantly when I met Nancy that I wanted to get to know her. I found a co-conspirator in Nancy who often pushed me to go even further than I anticipated. And the cool thing is that she didn't leave me to go it alone. We pushed together. So obviously, I'm not the only one who is fond of Nancy. She is adored and respected by many. So, I'd like for you to hear from some more folks. If you could turn your attention to the screen.
I first met Nancy at a wedding. I just graduated from law school, had no idea what I was going to do. She said, "Have you ever thought about working for the ACLU of Washington?" I was like, I hadn't, but now I should.
I mean, I truly view Nancy as one of the most impactful professional role models that I've ever had. One of the biggest lessons Nancy taught me is that you can be an effective lawyer with great success in court, but can also be kind, humble, and a teacher at the same time.
So Nancy is one of those rare people who always knew that she wanted to be a lawyer. She's like the only teenager that has ever skipped school to go watch a trial. Nancy skipped class to go watch the trial of Bobby Seale, the Black Panther. That's how dedicated she was, even at a young age, to civil rights activism.
When I first met Nancy, I was immediately impressed by her absolute brilliance and her kindness and compassion. So a lot of people may not know that before she was one of the baddest civil liberties lawyers on the planet, she was a tribal legal aid lawyer, in particular tribal public defender, for the better part of 25 years. So her commitment to Indigenous humanity runs deep. It spans almost the entirety of her career.
Nancy has dedicated most of her career to ensuring that Indigenous defense is operating in the way that ensures that people's constitutional rights are protected. She's had 3 major direct representation cases that she's been a part of. Nancy's amicus work is expansive. Her name most certainly appears before the Washington State Supreme Court more than any other attorney. There's one is State v. Gregory, which ultimately ended up abolishing the death penalty in Washington State. Another one was McCleary, and that ended up really just changing the entire landscape of public school funding. And Nancy's amicus work was a big part of what the Supreme Court relied upon when issuing that opinion. Nancy's amicus work has been foundational for building out Washington's constitutional protections and separating them from our state constitutional protections. We have greater privacy rights under Article 1, Section 7, in part because of the continued work she's done around that.
Nancy's not afraid to hold any institution accountable. Throughout the first year of COVID, Indigenous prisoners in the Washington State Department of Corrections were not allowed to worship in a group setting. And we had the good fortune of working with Nancy to rectify the situation, short of litigation. And it was through that collaboration, strong advocacy, kindness and compassion that we were able to succeed on behalf of Indigenous prisoners in the state of Washington.
Nancy has always been a great thought partner in the fight to reform Washington's broken criminal legal system. She understands that this work requires advocacy in the courts, in the legislature, and with the public to push us all to do better.
Nancy's work on jury diversity is pretty foundational. She was one of the primary drafters of General Rule 37, which governs how attorneys can strike potential jurors of color from a jury pool. It was one of the first of its kind in the country and has been replicated in multiple states. In my role now, we're still carrying out some of the visions that Nancy had.
Thank you, Nancy, for your long-standing and deep abiding commitment to Indigenous humanity. We are forever indebted to you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. It's so good to see everyone. I can't say thank you enough or convey how much of an honor receiving this award is. Thanks to all of you and many people who are behind all the things that have been discussed tonight. Special thanks to Kathleen Taylor, who the award's named for. She hired me in 1995. I have immense gratitude for being given the opportunity to do the work. When I started, I never imagined that it would last that long. There were ups, downs, sideways, but never a shortage of civil rights and civil liberties work that needed to be done and still isn't finished. Talk more about that in a minute, and we've heard some more about it already. First, I wanted to give some more thank yous, starting with the other award recipients tonight. Their courage and leadership is incredibly inspiring. I especially appreciate that they're working in communities literally from one end of the state to the other. Working with on behalf of community members all over the state has been one of the most memorable parts of the work. The indigent defense cases, Grant County, Grace Harbor County, Mount Vernon, Burlington, all that driving around the state, but it was worth every minute to be in community. I'm very grateful to the people in those places who were brave enough to speak up about injustices in their communities, willing to be our clients, especially when they had difficult things going on in their lives, like being in jail or juvenile detention. And I want to thank all the people behind all the work that has been talked about, the board members, ACLU of Washington members, supporters, cooperating attorneys, attorneys at the ACLU of Washington and nationwide, and department assistants, policy advocates, communications experts, interns, more. I learned so much from all of them. I'll never forget how awesome it was to be a team member with all of you. Shout out to colleagues at other organizations. I'm thankful many of you are continuing great social justice work. I especially appreciate the times we disagreed about things. It happened. But we had great conversations about whatever the issue was, and it really meant a lot to be able to do that. Speaking of being able to disagree about things, I wanted to spend a minute on one of the current civil liberties issues that's especially close to home for me, and we've talked about it a little tonight already, and that's the effort to ban books in schools and libraries. It hits close to home in one sense. My house is filled with books. Every single room has books in it. I've loved reading since I was 4, but also the issue is important because I probably ended up being an ACLU attorney for this long because of a personal experience with an allegedly controversial library book. It was one summer when I was 14 or 15, I was really bored, and I said, okay, I'm going to read every book in the library. It's a suburb of New Haven, Connecticut. It was a pretty small library. I said, oh, sure, I can do that. So I started reading, started at A and kept going. I was having a great time, learning a lot, no problem. I got to the book Valley of the Dolls. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that. All of a sudden, the librarian said, I can't read it unless I got my parents' permission. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? How come you let me read all those other books, but not... I think I got permission because I read it. It was like, of course, I'm going to read this. As far as I know, it had no influence on my life whatsoever. But the attempt to block me from reading it sure did. It made me want to work for an organization like the ACLU that's speaking out. Exactly. I was like, of course, speak out, take action, oppose book bans, so no one has to worry about access to books that, unlike that one, can have enormously powerful effects on people's lives. It's especially concerning that between that incident and now, there have been multiple waves of this, concerted attempts to make library books the enemy. Even though the past attempts failed, they keep trying again. And this one now seems like the scariest one of all. The ACLU has a national post that said 2,500 books were banned from libraries last school year. Awful. And then what are they trying to do? Like was discussed earlier today. What is their end game? They trying to make everyone just like them, hide the beautiful diversity of humans that's been around since time immemorial? Are they trying to smother hope and belonging? Whatever it is, it's the opposite of the theme of this event. So it's really scary. It's the reason that even though I'm retired, I plan to do whatever I can to support the ACLU and everyone else in fighting against book bans, and I hope you will too. Thank you.
Congratulations, Nancy. I know we all feel so warmly towards Nancy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Roxana Gomez, and I have the honor of leading the Youth Policy Program at the ACLU of Washington. Every year, the ACLU of Washington recognizes a young person in our community whose activism exemplifies work to defend, promote, and extend liberty and justice for all. This year, we are proud to recognize Ruby Alvarez-Clark, whose advocacy in Spokane has made great impact in promoting Indigenous justice and affirming the right of two-spirit LGBTQAI+ community. While at Spectrum, an intersectional, intergenerational, two-spirit LGBTQAI+ community organization serving Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho, Ruby led neighborhood outreach, indigiqueer initiatives, which led to the creation of Spokane's very first two-spirit powwow, traditional beating groups, and voter and policy outreach, an effort to build a culture of care and commitment to advocacy and allyship within their community. Congratulations, Ruby, and thank you for everything you do to center the voices of our most vulnerable community members in Spokane and everywhere.
The first time I met Ruby, kind of got hired on almost about the same time at Spectrum. When Ruby steps into a space, one of the things that you're going to find is that Ruby's going to find the joy in the room. Ruby is going to create it if it's not there.
So we were coworkers together and then realized that we are actually related cousins. We started to bond over the fact that Ruby really wanted to start learning beadwork. From the very beginning, they showed up to classes and they just kept at it. And because of their just brilliant brain, they latched on really quickly. I think that's something that's really beautiful about Ruby's knowledge collecting is they collect it to share it.
I decided to nominate Ruby because of the work they were leading in creative arts and the authentic spaces that they were creating. I see how their work is in line with ACLU Washington's vision to advance systemic equality, to promote Indigenous justice, and to affirm 2S LGBTQAI+ rights.
Even here in Spokane, we're on the edge of what I would say is extremism. We have people who are ready to take away our rights as queer people, take away our rights as Indigenous people. And so it's really important for us to stand strong and hold space for those who need it the most.
Spectrum being the first of its kind to be a comprehensive 2S LGBTQIA+ organization in Spokane is beyond necessary. It's survival, and I think what's really amazing about Spectrum's approach is we're not just focusing on surviving, we're really focusing on thriving.
Ruby is all about making sure that every marginalized voice, every historically excluded voice is heard, known, and has influence in the work that we're doing. Ruby came in with this idea that in order to really achieve what we hope for at Spectrum, we need to be community-based. We need to be focused on what does the community need? How do we get community voice? How do we ensure that everything that we do is as accessible as possible? Because of Ruby's partnership and because of Ruby's presence, we were able to imagine what two-spirit programming could look like in Spokane.
There's so many gender fluid kids that want to participate in their cultural activities, but don't often feel like they belong. The Two-Spirit Powwow created that space.
The Two-Spirit Powwow is so important to our communities because as Two-Spirit people, we are the marginalized of the marginalized. Pre-colonization, Two-Spirit people were honored, were respected, and so this Two-Spirit Powwow, it was really a statement to the world that we again are taking up our roles.
Ruby came in such beautifully culturally responsible ways, quietly and as a witness at first, and then slowly stepped in and said, hey, if there are roles to fill, I'm happy to fill it.
You know, some Two-Spirit people are already elders. They were born an elder. And I really believe that Ruby was born an elder.
Ruby, seeing you win this award was so characteristically you. You were so humble and unassuming about telling me about it, and then took a second of pause to appreciate what you had done, and immediately turned around and said, what's next?
This award is fragile. It's a little too fragile. All right. Well, hello all. Firstly, I would like to thank the ACLU Washington who put this all together and have made this an amazing experience, as well as Jennifer Mesa for not only nominating me, but also for the amazing work that you do for the Latino community in Spokane. Before I get on with my speech, I'd like to dedicate this award to my Aunt Vanessa Alvarez and pledge to show bravery with every obstacle I take on in her legacy, especially this one. Secondly, I would like to dedicate this speech to my dear friend and one of the most amazing activists in Spokane, KJ January. She's here. Both of these people, these amazing people, have shaped me in countless ways as a person and now activist, and I'm forever grateful. Thank you very much. I wanted to answer the question that was asked earlier of like why young people lead, and I think my speech answers it pretty well. Activism is a black and brown burden. When every facet of my being belongs to a marginalized community, it is no longer a choice whether I get to be an advocate or not. Not when every breath I take is an act of undermining a system that was built to deliberately and systematically exterminate me and my communities. Consider that and check your privilege. Is your life, the words you speak, and the space you take up, a constant fight against 400 years of oppression? Consider the burden that marginalized communities face and take some of that burden off. Advocate to protect, advocate to decolonize, and advocate for me. Because I will continue to advocate till the burden is no longer there, but not because it is my choice or my duty, but because it is inherently the black and brown burden. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Yes, good evening. It's a wonderful evening, and let's keep it going. My name is Martin Valadez, and I serve on the board of the ACLU Washington with honor. And it also is my honor to introduce this year's winner of the William O. Douglas Award. The ACLU of Washington gives this award to the person based on their consistent, outstanding, and sustained contribution to the cause of civil liberties. Special consideration is given to contributions within Washington State or to Washington residents who has made, or to a Washington resident who has made national contributions. In 1975, the award was given to Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas and renamed for him. Without knowing her in person, but knowing of her for many, many, many years, I decided to nominate Rosalinda for the decades of working on behalf of migrant and agricultural workers in our area and in our state. Rosalinda was born in Texas, lived in Mexico after that for 10 years, moved to Washington State in 1960, and began working in the fields of Skagit County at the age of 10. Her organizing work took her to California, where she successfully advocated for 4 major farm worker justice bills in 4 years. And that was with the farm workers union down there. Back here in Washington, she eventually created Community to Community, a woman-led organization dedicated to food sovereignty and immigrant rights. While Rosalinda does this selflessly and does not look for the limelight, she has been recognized by many organizations, including, and you may not know this, she received in 2020, even though she is not a chef, as far as I can tell, she received the James Beard Leadership Award. Woo! Please help me welcome and congratulate Ms. Rosalinda Guillen, our 2023 William O. Douglas Award recipient.
Rosalinda through the campaign of Jesse Jackson for president. And I think that that period of time in the 1980s revolutionized Rosalinda, opened up her mind to know that people of color could be at the very top leadership of this country, but that it would take a multiracial organization to do that. And that's when the Washington State Rainbow Coalition formed.
Rosalinda, I think, is really important because she's in it for the real social change. Nobody I've seen has that vision that she has. She had founded the United Farm Workers of Washington State. They went on a campaign for like 8 years and won the contract at Chateau Ste. Michele. So if you ever drink wine, it says Chateau Ste. Michele wine. That became the first union contract for farm workers in the history of Washington State.
What Rosalinda is able to do is to weave a powerful set of issues into the vision for the Front and Center Coalition. Farm workers in her community are the first and worst hit by environmental harms, whether it's because of pesticide pollution, wildfires, and now climate change. And so in 2015, Rosalinda, they had the foresight from the front lines to understand that the time was then to actually organize for climate change.
Rosalinda is like a ball of fire. She's so full of energy and ideas. She's so full of hope about the world and where we can take the world.
She wants to share knowledge and wants to let people grow. It's more than a mentorship, more than a friendship. She kind of prepared me mentally, like let me know that since the system is not built for us, we should challenge that system and reshape that system and make our own systems.
When she called me about community to community and her long-term thinking, developing feminist leadership, especially amongst farm worker women, I had no doubt that we could do it.
Her work, it is certainly a lifetime of advocacy on behalf of farm workers, but the issues that she covers is beyond that. Wage and hour theft, farm worker conditions in the fields, bathroom breaks, overtime pay. She has got an amazing, comprehensive way of framing why it is that climate justice affects farm workers, communities of color, those who are low income, the fight that they're fighting for, which is very intersectional about racial justice, economic justice, climate justice. They are at the front lines and they are at the center of change. She is not just an advocate, she lives life with a passion. She is one of the most spiritually and I think intellectually aligned women that I know.
I don't know what I'd do without her in my life because she's an inspiration to me. I value her friendship and comradeship so very, very much.
She's really humble, you know, she doesn't do any of the work for any kind of recognition or anything, but I think she's not accepting it on behalf of herself. She's accepting it on behalf of like all of us, on behalf of the whole movement for food sovereignty. And it's for everybody.
There's no one I know that more deserves this award, Rosalinda. You have been an inspiration to thousands of people.
What this kind of recognition of Rosalinda does is it inspires other women leaders and farm worker community leaders to carry on.
Rosalinda, felicidades, te amamos mucho. Bien merecido este reconocimiento por todo tu trabajo que has hecho por toda tu vida. Gracias por todo lo que has hecho por nosotros.
Ready? Thank you. Thank you all so very much. I'm really honored to receive this recognition from the ACLU in Washington State. This honor to me as an individual is also a recognition of the dignity and respect that over 284,000 farm workers and their families in Washington State have earned and deserve. I do not organize alone. I never have. I learned from mentors in the Rainbow Coalition that good organizing, collective decision-making, and strong, principled, fearless leadership is what is needed to keep hope alive. To believe that another world is possible, we have to build it together. Justice for farm workers cannot be gained by just one person. I have an organization backing me, community to community, with a powerful mission to fulfill. Thank you to C2C's board members that have stood by us in our strategic plan, Cindy Domingo, Maria Cuevas, and Emma Zavala Suarez. I work with an amazing leadership team on the ground to fulfill this mission with me, with the farm workers, and we are committed for the long haul. Thank you, Tara Villalba, Lucy Madrigal, Liz Darrow, and Brenda Bentley, my sisters in the movement. C2C does not work alone. We have powerful and committed leadership from the farm worker community. Thank you, Ramon Torres, Ana Lopez, Edgar Franks, Zenaida Perez, Marciano Sanchez Lopez, Kent Koch, Lelo, Victor Rodriguez, Tomás Madrigal, and all the members of Familias Unidas por la Justicia. We have so many allies that follow our leadership as we keep moving forward, building a just transition towards a solidarity economy. Thank you to all the strategic thinkers that have selflessly shared their strength of knowledge and ideas with us over the years. Thank you to all the talented and tireless attorneys providing pro bono services that have filed lawsuits and written legislation with us, the farm workers. Thank you, all of the boycotters of wine and berries. Thank you to the thousands of volunteers and supporters that have walked the picket lines, marched with us, protested, and borne witness to the courage and the resilience of farm workers in times of immense challenges and sorrows, as was the case during the pandemic and in 2017 with the death of Ernesto Silva Ibarra from exploitation during extended wildfire smoke over Whatcom County. I want to recognize and thank my family, my parents, Anita and Jesus Guillen, all my siblings and cousins, all of whom have worked in the fields, like myself, starting at the age of 10. My sons and my grandchildren, I've missed a lot of time with you. Organizing from the fields to the legislature and building an organization and a movement demands and requires total commitment and focus. To do this, I have given up time with my family, but have gained many brothers and sisters in the movement because I'm compelled to continue until there is economic and social justice for farm workers, complete justice. What is principled defense of civil liberties without compromise based on political considerations for farm workers? I believe it's speaking truth to power while organizing at the same time. There is a huge power imbalance in our state, and indeed in the country, when it comes to policy and justice for farm workers and Mother Earth. I believe that because the agricultural industry in the United States was founded on slavery and on stolen land, and because 99.9% of farm workers are brown and black, anything that has to do with farm workers is based on political considerations that the corporate agricultural employers leverage in every area where decisions are made about farm workers, about us. As US-based farm workers, my grandparents, my parents, and my siblings and I grew up working in an industry guided by structural racism to create a labor force with the lowest wages possible, and definitely no benefits of any kind. Structural racism is woven into every aspect of food production, which is why it is an industry and not a food system. This structural racism seeps into the rural communities where we live and affects every aspect of our lives. The result is generations of poverty for many farm worker families, including my family. Thank you to the ACLU for giving me this opportunity to bring this message to you all. And while I have your ear, because I know it'd be rude for you to get up and leave now. And that's the truth. I grab every moment I can. I ask that you follow and support front and centered the alliance we work with on all policy issues related to climate change and its impacts on agriculture and farm workers through the HEAL Act. Because climate change is about to challenge farm workers like we've never been challenged before with the structural racism that exists in the exploitation. I ask that you support Community to Community and Familias Unidas por la Justicia, and myself personally, by speaking to your legislative representatives and asking them to not allow the growers individually or through their organizations like WAFLA, Save Family Farmers, the Farm Bureau, or the Western Growers to make any changes to the overtime laws that will finally mandate the growers pay overtime to farm workers that work over 40 hours a week beginning in January of 2024 for the first time. Generations of farm workers like my parents have given up income to make the agricultural industry in Washington state powerful and profitable. This state still lives on an agricultural economy. It is time that the industry pay us the wages we deserve, that they hire more of us with higher wages and overtime pay instead of importing a quasi-slave labor force called H-2A. Work with community to build localized, healthy, resilient food systems with equity in Washington state so that we can feed all of us during times of crisis. We bring the innovation and el aguante que se necesita to transition from an industry to a balanced food system that will also protect Mother Earth. And the conversation that was had earlier, I have to say that we need, as farm workers, also need reparations from an agricultural industry that has profited on the backs of our elders, like my father, like mi tío Fernando. They got rich off of generations of farm workers in this country after they took our land from northern Mexico, Texas, Arizona, California, and New Mexico. We need reparations in the form of land and health coverage for the damage done to our bodies through the pesticide usage that has been used in this country. So we will continue on. And you all know that this is going to be a tough job. It continues to be tough. We need you all to support wherever you see a union flag or a farm worker. But most importantly, this next legislative session, the agricultural industry is strategizing right now on how to move the legislators to remove overtime pay in Washington state. This is going to be a political fight. It's going to be a legislative fight. And we are leading it. And we ask you to pay attention and support. It is really critical that you call your legislators. They cannot give in to the growers going in and demanding an end to overtime pay because they'll go out of business. You know what I say? If you have a farm and you cannot manage it well enough to survive paying your workers a decent wage in overtime, then by God, somebody else needs to run the agricultural industry. ¿Se puede? ¿Se puede? ¡Sí se puede! ¡Adelante!
Thank you so much, Rosalinda, for your stirring words, for your education. I think I just, in this moment, just realized, like, as we've been looking at the theme of dwelling in possibility, I think when I was first encountering the theme, I thought of dwelling as kind of this meditative moment, to dwell, to kind of like shift it from a type of status or static moment to a place of action. So what if we took the idea of dwelling, really thinking about how do we live and activate within possibility, right? And I'm so, so grateful. Can we make some noise for all of the awardees, for Nancy, for Ruby, for Rosalinda? Three phenomenal leaders that have demonstrated three extraordinary ways to activate us all, to call us in for that healing that we need for decolonization, for that healing that we need in our communities, and for us to truly dwell and activate within possibility. And so I'm so elated to close out our program tonight with a final performance by Black Belt Eagle Scout. Oh, sorry. Before I introduce Black Belt Eagle Scout, which I'm really excited about, just a housekeeping note, those really amazing lidded cups that were so genius that allowed us to sip our beverages inside, those are for you to take and reuse. So yay. Thank you, ACLU of Washington. I'm excited to use those as a water cup. So if you just make sure you grab them from the venue as you leave, or if you see an errant one left behind, adopt it and gift it out into the world, because we love reuse and sustainability in this time. All right. Catherine Paul, aka Black Belt Eagle Scout, is a member of the Swinomish Indian tribal community and creates dreamy indie rock music under the name Black Belt Eagle Scout. Catherine, or KP as she is also known as, travels around the world playing music from her heart, sharing stories of connection to her homelands and ancestors within her songwriting. In her day job, KP works for the Pacific Northwest-based and Native-led nonprofit Potlatch Fund as their communications manager. Tonight, Black Belt Eagle Scout will share 3 songs: At the Party, On the River, and My Blood Runs Through This Land. Please join me in welcoming Black Belt Eagle Scout to the stage.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here tonight to play music for you. I'm just gonna tune my guitar really quick.
We always sing. We always sing. How is it you suffer through this kind of love? It puts you in a dark place, dark place. Even when you look at me, your heart's so full. I'll think of you from a nice place, nice place. Ooh, 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 ooh.
Yes, Sam. Thank you. I want it here on the river. I want it here through your lips. I want it here, but I can't see you. But I can feel your energy. I'm going to play one more song. I'm the daughter of an attorney and a judge and a tribal senator. Both my parents have those backgrounds in their life, so I'm really honored to be here, to have been invited to be a part of this event, so thank you so much for having me. The next song I'm going to play is called My Blood Runs Through This Land, and when I play this song, I like to envision my ancestors, past, present, future, running really powerfully along our waters, through our forests, just with the most, wonderful feelings in our bodies that we can live in this world. And so that's what this song is about, and it's dedicated to all the Indigenous people in this world, worldwide. Thank you.
Waking up is light shining.
Quiana. Thank you.
Please keep the noise and applause going for Black Belt Eagle Scout. Thank you so much for that beautiful performance. Yes. I don't think there's any better way to spend a Saturday night, right? It was like literally every single cup in my body is full. It has been such an honor to join you tonight. And please, can we make one more round of applause for all of our performers, our awardees, all the staff at the ACLU of Washington, that Brown Girl Cooks, the staff at Town Hall, those of us who've been joining us online. I personally feel like I needed this, and I hope that y'all feel like you needed this too. This gathering of community, I think, matters now more than ever, as it always does. I walk away so thankful for art, for creativity, for possibility, and for the fight that we must always contribute to and make. And so thankful for the ACLU of Washington for all of the work that you do in our community. So thank you. So please grab your copy of Decolonizing Wealth. Edgar Villanueva is ready to sign your books downstairs, and Black Belt Eagle Scouts merch is going to be for sale. I hope she has vinyl because I'm trying to pick it up. And make sure to take home your fantastic reusable totes and cups and help out any neighbors that forgot them so that you can gift them. Thank you again so much for being here, for supporting the ACLU of Washington, and here's to a future ripened with possibility. Thank you so much.